Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good morning and welcome to the show Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, where we bring it to you as it is, when it drops, and from where it drops. My name is Emmanuel Ujadigile. So good to have you join us this morning. We hope that the country's economic situation is easing up on your end, and generally, we also hope that things have been going well with you, and we pray that things continue to go well with you. We're reaching you live from Star Times channel, DTT platform, 190. You can also follow all our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to check out all our content. Of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel to be able to follow us live and also catch up with episodes of the programs that you've missed. We bring it to you as it is here. We bring you the newspaper review segment, the interview segment, and of course, Spring Trends, where we show you who is trending, what is trending, why they're trending, and what people are saying about the who, the what, and the why. Thank you for your time this morning. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for joining us on this beautiful Tuesday morning. I am Temitope Ajijalaolua Ola. Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Spring on Western Spring Television.
Well, some interesting stories also coming out again out of Nigeria, out of this country that has been enmeshed in so much drama in the past 48 hours, past 24 hours also. People are going on strikes, people are showing their displeasure at so many things. But for me, the most striking thing that has happened overnight is Aisha Dahiru Binani approaching a federal high court asking that her declaration as governor be reviewed. And you begin to wonder, your declaration was illegal
in the first place.
You're approaching a court to affirm illegality, and you're telling Ahmadu Fintiri to wait till the tribunal before he raises any objection. And for me, it spoke to desperation. It spoke to a rationalization of illegality. It spoke to the fact that people don't care how they come to power, as long as they come to power. That's what matters to them. They just want to get to power. But I hope that our courts will stand up to do the right thing and to interpret the law properly.
Analysts have said that there are some things that need not get to the court.
Yes.
Because from all indications, you were not adding up. The numbers were not adding up for you, and you still think that you have some sort of justification to head to the court. Well, it just speaks to some of the things that we take to court and why some people would say that they are frivolous sometimes. But I think that now that it's in court, well, the court would do, right. And I just hope that in the end she doesn't even implicate herself. And instead of being, given some sort of succor, she would even come out with some punishment of some kind.
So in case you missed our news bulletin yesterday, we did an analysis of the whole thing. And what it is that before the rerun election, Governor Ahmadu Fintiri had 421,000 plus votes. She had 309,000 votes. The margin of lead was 31,249. Now the polling units, 69 polling units where votes were cancelled, have a total number of registered voters of about 42,000. But in total, the number of PVCs collected are 37,000 plus. Now, what it means is that for her to be declared governor, for her to win, first, all of the 37,000 plus people have to come out to vote.
Okay.
If by some stroke of luck and by some chance, they all come to vote, and all of their votes are valid, she has to first cancel the 31,249 votes on ground to be at par with Ahmadu Fintiri. That leaves us with about 5,000, 6,000 votes she now has to score all of those 6,000 votes, or at least a vast majority of those 6,000 votes. Now, we know how politics is. We know how voting is. It is almost very nearly impossible for all the PVC, people who collected their PVCs to come out to vote. So on what basis could she have been declared winner? And on what basis could she have convinced herself to give an acceptance speech? I mean, this is Nigeria. A lot of things happen. There's a governor referred to as the Supreme Court governor in the country because of how he came to power. But then issues like this, even as a common person who is not a legal practitioner, electoral umpire, the mathematics are clear. You need to have, first, clear off the 31,000 plus deficit, the margin of lead, then establish a lead that will not be more than, that will be more than the cancelled vote. Definitely, you're still going to have some cancelled votes. Some persons will not come out to vote. Everybody cannot vote for you. Some persons will vote for Ahmadu Fintiri. So you see that
we're just, you know.
So you jump in the gun and now go into court. It also speaks to the fact that a 7th senator doesn't know that the REC does not have the power to declare results. And that also tells us about the quality of the people in the National Assembly. You're a lawmaker. You were part of those who passed, who sent the Electoral Act, the amendment bill to President Buhari for signing. So it is assumed that you must have read the bill, you must have known the content, and you must have seen somewhere there that the REC does not have the power to announce results. Only the returning officer does. So it's either she doesn't know or she knows and she's willfully ignoring that part of the law.
And that's what we were saying yesterday. People just want to take up these offices. You don't want to abide by the rules. You don't want to do right by that office. You just want to be there because you want to wield power. It's not the way to go anymore, especially not with our situation or the dynamism of the Nigerian circumstance right now. We need people who know what to do and who know exactly what they're getting into. You can't just get there now and tell us this is what you were expecting to meet and this is the reality on ground. You should have factored in anything at all that you may meet, and before you would even vie for that position in the first place, because like I said, a lot of hopes are hinged on these offices. People rely on those offices to function appropriately, to be able to lead a good life. And if something is wrong there, we just might not be able to get by as a people.
Well, my worry is that we are setting a dangerous precedent from this election. The Adamawa incident is there. A person standing trial on a 500 million naira bill for suspected murder and arson of 15 people has won election. Few days to the election in Enugu, a candidate was killed, was burnt to death. His brother won the election. In Ebonyi State, the police has arrested a particular party chairman who has confessed that he masterminded the killing of a PDP chieftain. We're setting terrible precedents. And that's why the judiciary must be careful. If you legitimize some of these things, you're putting the country in a big mess. Because 2027 is going to be a different ballgame entirely. All our hopes now rest on the judiciary, and we hope that they do right by us, they do right by the Constitution, and that they set the right precedent. Well, we'll come back after this break and bring you the papers. Do stay with us. All right, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the show. It's still Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. We now begin our newspaper review segment with the Punch newspaper. We'll start with the Punch newspaper. Banner headline says, fuel subsidy, federal government begins 40% pay rise for workers, April ending. That's on page 24 of the Punch newspaper. Government will settle January to match arrears later, says Labor Ministry. Increased transport, housing allowances, also TUC tells federal government. a lot of promises being made. The Labour Ministry is saying that government will settle January to March arrears later, and Trade Union Congress is asking for an increase in transport housing allowance. Also, one amazing discovery is that sometimes your allowances could even be more than your salary.
Yes.
For instance, I was going through something for trends yesterday, and saw that the governor's salaries are about 2 million naira thereabout, but all of the allowances amount to 11 million naira.
Yes.
So that's why
In fact, oftentimes it's mostly the allowances, all of the allowances together added up is more than the basic salary.
Times 5 of the basic salary. And that's why you can hear some persons say, I never took salaries for 8 months, for 2 years, because your salary is peanuts, compared to the allowances that you get.
But I don't know how this reality is going to, well, the federal government is trying to, start from April now, saying that January to March will be paid, the arrears will be paid later. It's a good thing that there's a pay rise, no doubt.
And there's a plan for it.
Yeah, well, that there's a plan for it that's going to start April ending. But then the reality, let's talk about the reality, our debt profile. The revenue, 96% being used to service, debt. And
we just borrowed $800 million.
We're borrowing, exactly. So I know that it's something that is needed for the federal government to increase transport and housing allowances and all other allowances too that the TUC is pointing the attention to. But the reality is that we might not be able to sustain that given what our pocket is saying as a country. We just might not be able to.
Well, the government works in mysterious ways. We just might see some miracles, some abracadabra working out. Well, below that story, the pictures there are that Lagos and Abuja striking aviation workers reject government plea, threatening total shutdown. There was a partial strike, warning strike that began yesterday, grounding flights all around major airports in the country, even disrupting the flow of traffic because some of them took to the roads to block the roads. And let's see if the government will have a sit down with them today or tomorrow to stop this strike from going further.
Well, I think that we should always name things as they are. The government should have given their plea way before now, when they were threatening to do this. But you see, I think that we just have a state where we want to see the extent to which people, people can, the first thing endure, then the next you want to stretch them and know what their capabilities are. Because you really need not have them be in the streets before you take necessary actions. But you just want to stretch them to their limits, and then you see the force they can pull. And this is what you get. You have a shutdown, partial shutdown now. Eventually, they're going to give a total shutdown. What happens then? You're not thinking about what the ripples will be. You're just thinking of the now. And that is not good for us at all. The government should always take people's, I'm not saying every threat should be considered, but these people have been vying for this for a very long time now. And if they threaten strike, you should know what that means and be able to forestall it.
Well, strikes aren't always good for the economy. There's massive loss in terms of revenue coming at a time where our economic indices is sliding really down.
Yes, and it might not even be safe, because when you have them striking, you could feel, some sort of security threat. You release the police, something happens, somebody may get injured, somebody may die. That's a loss to the country as well. But we don't think about the human, aspect to these things. We just think about the economic angle. That's it's really something the federal government and all other government, states and local levels should always look to.
Well, on page 26, $2.8 billion gas pipeline progressing to power 3,600 megawatts plants. It's coming from the federal government. And two parties challenge Makinde's election. Tribunal orders service on Sanwo-Olu. You can get to know the two parties right there. On page 12 of the Punch newspaper, the middle story, Ogun woman sells 18-month-old baby to repay loan. Saw the story yesterday. Sold the child for about 600,000 and just to repay the loan. And then I saw a lot of people coming down hard on her, saying she's a terrible mother, she's a this, she's a that, and all of that. And I had a different opinion.
There's no doubt about the fact that she's a terrible mother.
I had a different opinion about it. It takes us back to the biblical times when there was so much hunger in the land that people had to eat their own children. I have seen, they say that you don't know the worth of a man's capabilities or the level of a man's capabilities except he's one, faced with so much money, or two, faced with no money at all. I'm not excusing her act. It was terrible. There are other things she could have done.
Exactly.
But I've seen people
Hunger makes you rational.
I've seen people commit suicide just because they are owing about 50,000. Money you can raise if you stand by the street, or at that point sometimes you don't even think. You just impulsively do things. It's scary, poverty. It's a very scary thing, and impulsiveness is even worse when you combine both. At the same time, apart from getting her arrested, the baby should be retrieved, taken away from her, but she should also go through some sort of rehabilitation to understand that whatever you're going through, you went through the pains of, carrying the child, the pains of childbirth, and also the people who bought the baby must be apprehended for taking advantage of someone's unfavorable condition. And how do you buy a child for 600,000 naira? What do you intend to do with the child, with the baby, 18 months old, just a year and 6 months? That's terrible.
You see, there are several relations that we could give this. You see, when you as a person decide to do with yourself whatever, even the law doesn't see that as acceptable, especially when you want to commit suicide, an attempted suicide now, and it fails, you're going to be apprehended as well. That's wrong. But when you think about doing that to someone else, that's a height of, the wrongest things ever. And that's the height of terrible, wicked. And if she did that to herself,
own child,
that would have been understood. But your own child, there's no excuse for it.
Yeah, like if she had sold herself.
Yes.
So who would have taken care of the child?
It doesn't matter. Sell yourself into slavery or somebody's service. That would have been acceptable, but not your child. And I don't know how she came about the child, but there are people who want this thing and they're looking for it with so much money.
It is well. And we hope that the authorities do the right thing. Above the nameplate of the Punch, PDP governors demand Adamawa Rex trial. Binani sues INEC. Well, the gist now is that the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC has relieved Mr. Hudu Unisa Ari of his duties as Resident Electoral Commissioner of Adamawa. Has been ordered to stay far away from the secretariat, from the headquarters. Apart from that, people are asking that he should be arrested, tried for breaking the law.
Of course.
And the person, you see, the chain of events, I'm particularly interested in this election.
Really?
It is so clear that you begin to wonder what Binani's, I know I'm looking for the right word now, what her end game is. The person who declared you as governor has been dismissed. His declaration has been declared null and void.
Yeah.
Yet you're going to court to say, it's just like somebody steals a pot of food and he gives you the food. The person is caught embarrassed, the food is retrieved from him, and then you go to court and say, my lords, that man gave me food and they've taken away my food. I mean, it doesn't even hold water. The food is not the property of the person who gave you. Stolen is a thief. The person has been apprehended. So why she's going to court, I don't know.
Drama.
I mean, it's so much drama. And you're a lawmaker who should know the law. You are a custodian. You are a maker of law. You are breaking the law. She broke the law by going, I mean, collation had not ended. Collation was still ongoing.
Yes.
But you were already, there is a sitting governor. You were already accepting opposition.
And well,
we'll be fine eventually.
All in all, summing up everything, INEC as a body needs
serious overhaul.
Exactly. And sanctions where necessary, really, because we would say that well, since the inception of the elections, we've been talking about some anomalies, you know, but this can't even be whitewashed in any way. It's just what it is, and it's not something that should have been at all. I don't know. Imagine. I'm just speechless.
It is well. So let's quickly run through external reserves. Slide further to $35 billion. That's on page 23. And marginal oil field sale generated 203 billion naira, says Buhari. Page 26 of the Punch newspaper.
All right, moving on quickly to the Guardian newspaper. The headline says 40% of failed transactions unresolved as e-payments hit 49.4 trillion naira. 40% of failed transactions unresolved as e-payments hit 49.4
I am a victim of one of those failed transactions.
Everyone who ever, had any business with e-payments during the cash crunch would be among this 40% of failed transactions. It's I don't see any way anyone at that time was able to circumvent that particular system. It was going to fail at one point or the other. It was, and it's really terrible. I'm sure some of us can still talk so calmly because of the amount that we have involved, but there are some people, they had huge amounts, and we don't know if they're still going to be resolved or they're going to remain unresolved. But we don't know at all. Well, on page 4, new wave of kidnappings amid botched Naira redesign policy. New wave of kidnappings amid botched Naira redesign policy. Well, even the system that was adopted before was still looking for ways to manage that and nab the kidnappers. We've been unable to do that, and now there's a new wave of kidnappings. We just hope that our government would intervene quickly in this. But on page 3, NAFDAC grants provisional approval for first malaria vaccine in Nigeria. NAFDAC grants provisional approval for first malaria vaccine in Nigeria.
Yes, we'll be having a conversation around that incident later on in the show, and to see what it portends for the fight against malaria. But personally, it's a good one for that fight against malaria.
Well, I hope we don't have concerns or we don't have mixed feelings, just like several people did with the COVID-19 vaccine.
So we'll get to have that conversation with an expert later on.
Right on page 5, fresh oil output concerns as ExxonMobil declares force majeure. For fresh oil output concerns as ExxonMobil declares force majeure. And that's on page 5. Well, on page 15, Chinese brands dominate Nigeria's mobile phone market. Chinese brands dominate Nigeria's mobile phone market. Well, the Chinese brand broke out into Nigeria a very long time ago. But now we can see different, different, brands from that particular market in our markets now, and they dominate.
I look forward to when Nigerian brands will dominate foreign markets, if it's ever going to happen. I look forward to that period, that day. I mean, the things, the things that we
domestic problems.
The things that we should be even selling out, we're buying. I mean, I still think of the fact that we import palm oil every day. It really saddens me that that happens.
I think there was a time it was said that seeds were taken out of Nigeria by a particular country of the same, palm oil and all. And imagine us now, several decades later, importing the same palm oil. It just shows how well we are going down and retrogressing. But I just hope that we can pick up our pieces now rather than later. But just beside that story, aviation workers reject federal government's plea, disrupt flight operations over COS and welfare, condition of service and welfare. That's on page 3 of the paper. We can see them right there on the face of the papers. And to the bottom strip of the paper on page 6, Adamawa despite regs suspension, PDP insists on protest till poll concludes. That's on page 6, and that is all we have on the face of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
The polls have to be completed. The process has to be conducted and completed in Adamawa. We can't leave the state in a limbo. We can't leave the state in a limbo and just leave a vacuum there. Elections must conclude in Adamawa State. There must be a governor. Someone else must emerge. I don't know how INEC could do, but INEC is in a very, very tight position now. Declare Amadu Fintiri, opposition will scream because he's incumbent. He has the power of incumbency. That's what they use to rob us of our victory. They will scream it. And it's worse now, declare Binani, it was illegal, all of those things. Declare Fintiri again, they've stolen our mandates, they had already declared. And the danger for me is the fact that we sit here in the studio to analyze these things and we understand the point of law. There are people at the grassroots who know nothing about the Electoral Act, they know nothing about who is empowered to declare results. All they know is that one person declared this person and this commission canceled this. The kind of propaganda that can be run with that development can set ablaze an entire state. People can go about saying that INEC has already declared this woman as our governor, but some elements within INEC have hijacked that process and said that if she's not the governor because of this, because of that. They now play different. I've already seen people say because they don't want a woman governor to emerge, that's why they are doing that. Those are sentiments that will now be played up. And that leaves INEC in a tight position. Do you pander to sentiment, or do you pander to the point, or do you stick to the point of law? And that is where it is a dicey decision. That is where INEC should have known that you cannot toy with things like this. There's just one shot that you have at fixing things. If you get that wrong, you can't come back from it. There's no coming back from this. I don't see a way that INEC will come. Well, the courts will decide eventually whoever is declared the winner of the election. But at the point of declaration, INEC has already shot itself in the foot and put itself in a precarious situation where no matter where the dice falls, no matter where the pendulum swings, there will be problems. And I hope it doesn't consume us in this country.
And that's making it obvious now that there is little or no voter education by INEC. And then even at the highest levels of office, and just like you were saying, if some senators, if some House of Representatives member, if some people in public offices are disregarding the law or do not even know what the law says about some certain things.
Look at Festus Keyamo, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria, is a minister, is a sitting minister in the Federal Republic, celebrating result of an election announced by a rec. But are we blinded by our party affiliations? by our agenda and propaganda that we no longer see the truth. You were quick to congratulate someone and then quick again to apologize, to withdraw that congratulation after you had been told that this is what happened. But in the first instance, it shows that most of those people don't even do due diligence. They don't even search for things. They just say, oh, this is what's happening, okay, and that's it. It's a dangerous way to live. But let's go on to the Daily Independent now. Our fuel subsidy removal is the banner headline. Federal government will spend more than $800 million earmarked for palliative. Minister explains why cost of servicing foreign debt is rising. Now, this $800 million, it's not our money. We borrowed it to do. We borrowed the $800 million to use as palliatives to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. I have never seen where people borrow money to give out. I mean, you ask me for money, I say, okay, I'm unable to, but hold on. I go to borrow money to give to you. I'm not expecting you to pay me back. It means I have to do more work to get money to return the loan that I took. And
now we are left with the explanations. We're explaining now why the cost of servicing foreign debt is rising.
And why we may spend more than the money we've even borrowed. It is well. Page 6, federal government okays use of Oxford malaria vaccine. What we said, we'll talk about that. Lalong other security forces to deal with attackers as many are killed, houses burnt in Plateau communities. Page 29. Again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the optic in insecurity issues after the elections is worrying. It's worrisome. During the election period, we really didn't hear bandits, these attackers that.
Yeah. And we had fears of those.
Maybe we should have elections every other day or every other weekend so that these people don't come to disturb us.
You want to put the federal government in trouble.
Well, maybe a way to tackle it. Lagos gubernatorial election tribunal okays Gbadebo Road Vivers prayer to serve Sanwo-Olu via substituted service. Page 6. Issuing flood warning is not enough. Take action. Diri urges federal government. Page 29. And still on that page 29. Without partisan corrupt officials, PDP governors tell INEC. Call on commission to sanction show of shame in Adamawa. Labour Party crisis. NLC others lead Abure to party secretariat in Abuja. One faction now chairman to stay away. The bottom line drama as police arrest Abga factional chairman in court premises. Page 29. And above the nameplate, INEC asks controversial Adamawa rec to stay away from office. Holds emergency meeting on state's poll today. As on page 29. Still, a lot of things happen on page 29 of the Daily Independent. So many stories there.
Yeah.
And aviation minister warns strikes may lead to economic losses as workers paralyze activities in Lagos airport. Others. And those are the stories on the faces of the national dailies this morning. And so many interesting stories, but so many worrisome stories also.
Yes.
The strike action by the aviation workers, the fact that we're looking at spending more than $800 million, that will be billions of dollars now, trillions of naira, just to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. Sometimes you sit down and you laugh at several things. But it's not the kind of laughter that comes from the bottom of your heart, but it's the kind of laughter that comes from a place of, oh, we're in trouble. That kind of laughter. You just laugh that, oh, we're in trouble. You know. But I hope that the government can come out of all of this. The government, the incoming administration is just about...
Well, I don't see how this particular one can come out of this.
No, that's what I'm saying, the incoming administration now. It's just a little over a month before President Buhari's administration leaves office. And that of President-elect Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu will come into force. It remains to be seen how he will tackle some of the challenges that the Buhari government will be handing over to him. But those are the papers this morning. When we come back, we'll bring to you our guest to discuss issues surrounding the health sector, malaria, vaccine being okayed in Nigeria. Let's see if it's going to be efficient and the people's disposition towards the vaccine. To stay with us.
Can you imagine the feeling when you get your news as the break with facts and clarity? Our news are reported as it is.
In Africa, and all those who masterminded the way it happened will have to pay a price.
Enjoy Western programs, projecting culture and tradition to the world. Brought to you as the break and recapped every hour for your update.
You must never forget the sacrifices of the heroes of Nigeria's democracy.
Produced and brought to you in a unique way never before seen.
Western Spring.
Western Spring.
And Western Spring Television.
Television is coming home in your color and culture.
James Ajibolaige was a lawyer who obtained his first degree in classics from Nigeria's premier University of Ibadan. Born September 13, 1930, the orator and the polyglot spoke impeccable English, French, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba languages. His fine diction placed him among classical orators and public speakers like Cicero, the Roman orator. This attribute earned him the prefix Cicero of Esauke. He authored Kaduna Boy, an autobiography, Detainee Diary, Constitution, and The People, among 6 other books. Bolaige was a colorful politician, elected governor of Oyo State in 1979 and appointed a federal minister in 1999. He was a pioneer founder of Afenifere, the Yoruba social, cultural, and political group. He invested his political sagacity to propel the group to the height of political leadership and decision-making in the southwest of Nigeria. Bolaige was assassinated on the 23rd December 2001. His murderers are yet to be apprehended till today. Western Spring Television identifies Bolaige as a watershed character in history. Born 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kwan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwifed the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used his political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Western Spring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history. It was a Euro-American trade in slaves by which 12.5 million Africans were captured from their indigenous homelands and transported via the Atlantic to Europe and the Americas. The transatlantic slave also
welcome back to the show, Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. This morning, we've been having some conversations for you on the faces of the national dailies, and some of the recurring stories. And part of the recurring stories is what we're looking at this morning on our interview segment. We're joined live in the studio by Professor Mansour Adeleke, who is a professor of public health, entomology, and parasitology at the Osun State University in Osun Osogbo. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much. Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
It's good to have you on the show. So let's first of all, away from the vaccine now that has been approved, what are the indices for malaria in Nigeria? How much of a problem is it for us?
Well, malaria is a public health trouble or issue in Nigeria. As we know, even from years back, we know that the easiest way to dodge any trouble for lateness to work, absenteeism, and all other issues is to quickly say that I was sick yesterday, and the reason for being absent from the work will be I had malaria. Malaria has been a trouble for several years. We met it on ground, and we have been battling with it over years. And this particular disease is transmitted by a mosquito. Precisely female Anopheles mosquito. And these female Anopheles mosquitoes, there are different types. We call them species in biology. But the most prominent among them is Anopheles gambiae sensulato, which is found mostly in tropical areas in Africa. And we also see that a lot of people that are affected by malaria always broadly belong to three groups, or they bear the brunt of this particular infection. Number one are the children. Number two, they are the pregnant women. Then the number three are immunocompromised individuals. And this particular disease is responsible for thousands of deaths annually, and a lot of public health burdens, socioeconomic impact, and a lot of costs is also associated with malaria impact in Nigeria and Africa generally. And as it stands today, Nigeria is one of the leading countries in quotes that is having the highest burden of the disease worldwide. And scientists have shown over the years that sometimes it fluctuates, but as we stand today, Nigeria accounts, I think, with Republic of Congo, accounts for the highest burden of this disease that is found worldwide.
All right. How much of a problem does this does malaria pose in today's world, or how many people are being attacked, or what are the statistics of death? From malaria.
Well, the statistics so far has shown that over 255 million people are affected by malaria worldwide, and several thousand, over 600,000. I'm saying this because different statistics comes, and some of them that are very recent, either 2021 or 2022, shows that over 600,000 people die as a result of malaria annually. And as it stands today, Nigeria accounts for Nigerian Democratic Republic of Congo, I think, accounts for highest burden in terms of people that are affected and in terms of death or mortality as a result of the disease. And on several accounts, many people are also being dealt with by malaria, but try to manage out of it, and it reduces productivity. You discover that somebody is away from work for almost 3 or 4 weeks or 5 days, and the next thing you hear is that I've been at home because of malaria. So statistically, those are the things we look at. But much of the problem, it's all over. Apart from mortality, the socio-economic impact of this particular disease is also enormous and huge. I've mentioned that if you are late, I'm sorry to say that to studio now, and you are asked, I'm sorry, I was having a headache yesterday, and the next thing is that I was feeling like I have malaria, and that's why I just felt that I need to rest before coming. Everybody talks about malaria. It's everywhere, and it's much problem that has to be tackled as urgent as we can.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the entire thing, what is the relationship between, there's a running joke, you know, that people with the AA genotype are more susceptible to malaria. Is there any scientific or medical truth to that?
Yeah, there's some scientific evidence that have shown that some element of individuals based on the genetic makeup will be more susceptible to malaria than the other. And it has to do with the some protective element inside and the length of the circulation of the blood inside the body, because the replenishment of the blood inside the body varies. AA has longer period before the blood is replenished, followed by AS and in that lines, and also the level of reproduction, or let me say propagation of this parasite inside individuals will vary depending on some of these immunological factors that I've mentioned, and then the blood characteristics that I've also enumerated. Scientific information has shown that AA will be more susceptible as a result of the reason that I've given, and they move to other areas. But I think there's still much more studies to be done to be able to at least put this in perspective. But that has been what we know in scientific realm.
So now we're back to the fight against malaria. The vaccine now that has been approved, the R21 Matrix M, is developed by the University of Oxford and manufactured by the Serum Institute of India. It was announced yesterday by Mojisola DAE, of the Director General of NAFDAC. How do you see this being a catalyst in the fight against malaria?
Well, let me say that approach to the control of malaria varies, and until you understand that it involves complex side, or it involves a lot of complexity where integrated approach how to be brought into the whole play, we may not be able to combat the trouble of malaria in Africa and Nigeria particularly. Before I answer that question of how would the vaccine play a role in accelerating the elimination of this parasite, when you look at those countries that have fought malaria as a disease, they've employed a lot of strategies, and some of these strategies involve fighting the parasite at one end and then fighting the vector that transmits the parasite at the other end. I've mentioned at the beginning of this interview that mosquito transmit malaria. Not all the mosquitoes, but Anopheles, female Anopheles mosquitoes. Female Anopheles mosquitoes, because not all the mosquitoes that come into your bed that are transmitting the infection to you. There's other species of mosquitoes, Culex, Aedes, that they don't transmit malaria, even though they transmit other diseases. But these Anopheles mosquitoes, they also have that behavior. They rest more indoor, even though few of them can rest outdoor. And apart from the fact that they rest more indoor, they also have their biting hours. And that's the reason why the aspect of the ITN, insecticide-treated net, was introduced, that when you are inside this net, to a certain extent, you are protected. That's one line. The second line is that environmental management. How do we manage our environment in such a way that mosquitoes will not breed? When we were growing up, I'm so sure in 80s, the common language, wele wele lomboa. The wele wele is what they do is that we say wele wele yom yom. What we call yom yom in Yoruba land is mosquito. And what do we mean by that? The environmental officers move around to ensure that you don't have potential breeding sites around your house that can support the breeding of mosquitoes and may translate to the biting of mosquitoes, and then you have the infection. what we call that process is what environmental modification, or what we call source reduction. You don't allow the mosquitoes to grow up to the extent of biting you. That's another approach. The next approach that is now being introduced, because in Africa it's a bit complex. Complex because in other countries, the environmental factors that support the breeding of mosquitoes can easily be rounded off. Cuba eliminated malaria some years back because of the environmental, and the environment is very easy. But in Africa, we have a lot of areas where anopheles can thrive and they can breed. So the aspect of attacking it from one front may not work. There is another need for us to introduce other protective measures, because we have seen over the years that fighting malaria from the aspect of environmental protection or factor, yes, we are winning, but to some extent, some people are also abusing it. If you go around Osogbo or some areas, about very close to where I stay, you will see somebody constructing a garden with mosquito nets, insecticide bed nets, being used as a fence for the garden. These are the nets that are supposed to be in coat, used inside your bedroom, and you sleep underneath. Meaning that you cannot approach that aspect of interaction, cannot only be a sole source of protecting you against malaria, because people are already abusing it, and some other aspects are also coming on board. That's the reason why we are saying that, can we have a vaccine that once you take it into your body, it can protect you like any other diseases that we have around. And having said that, the battle or the journey to produce vaccines started some years back. A lot of studies have been done in Africa. They just discovered that they discover one candidate, we call it candidate vaccine, and by the time they do experimental trials, experimental and clinical trials, they just discover that it fails. And they will abandon that, move to another level. But last year, WHO first approved the first vaccine that we call RTS, and over 1 million people have been given this in children. And what it means is that it can protect at least 50% in endemic areas of the children. Don't forget, I mentioned at the beginning that you talk about people that are mostly affected by this malaria, children under 5, between 0 and 5, pregnant women, and immunocompromised. Other that fellow has HIV or any other diseases or ailment that can compromise the immunity. So what you are saying now is that to reduce the child mortality, that we know that because of the immunological issues, they are not strong enough to at least bear it. If I check your body as you are sitting there, you may be feeling fine, but when they look at your blood, that's when you see the lab scientists will say that few malaria parasites seen. That means that to some extent the parasitemia may not be high, but you have element of malaria, but your immunity is able to deal with it, so you don't have any problem. But in children, their immunity is not yet built up. There is need to introduce something that can activate the immunity and serve as a second layer guard for the children. And that's why this vaccine came on board. And WHO approved the first vaccine last year. The second one now being tried, manufactured, or let me say developed by University of Oxford, is a second layer that is a second type of vaccine that is expected to protect about 75 or 80% of the children, and can protect them for about 1.5 to 2 years. What it means is that for children between, let me say 5 or 7 to 36 months, 7 months to 36 months, by the time you take about 3 doses of this vaccine, it will protect you for about 2 years. By the time you get to 2 years, you have already crossed one of the dangerous zones of being under the attack of malaria or easily come down of malaria. And NAFDAC has all the enabling law to regulate the drugs and the foods being brought into the country. Some of the studies that have been done around this R21 vaccine have shown that it can give, it passes what we call threshold. The threshold of efficacy is around 75 according to the WHO guideline, and it was more than that threshold. And what we are saying is that in Nigeria, most importantly, that is still accounting for the highest burden of the infection. Can we bring up something to protect the children, at least more than 50%, and this infection can be on the way phased out? So it's a welcome development. Ghana happened to be the first country to adopt it. And after several stages of both experimental, preclinical, and clinical trial, they feel that the advantage is far, far, far outweighing whatever few risks that we may be talking about. And Ghana approved it, and Ghana has been using it. So for Nigeria, I'm so sure having it will also enhance and catalyze.
I was going to ask if we should be worried that we are the second country approving this vaccine. If we shouldn't have to wait for other countries to also try it, do you think that it's something to be worried about?
Well, issue that has to do with vaccine in Africa is a very complicated issue, and it's very dicey because a lot of phobia has been developed even before issue of vaccine is had. You remember when the issue of COVID-19 came on board, despite the troubles of COVID-19, people are still very reluctant to take the vaccine. And they will tell you, if you take it, the number of sperm that you're having as a man will reduce. They don't want you to have children again. My neighbor took it yesterday, he died. A lot of issues. They said in so country. And we saw one or two countries that came up in Africa. You remember your Madagascar that came that said that they have one tonic. And what happened at the end of the day? We discovered that all did not possess the efficacy that is expected to protect against COVID-19. But at the end of the day, people are now having COVID-19 vaccine virtually everywhere now. And I took it, I'm so sure you'll have taken your own. Nothing has come on board. Where I'm going precisely is that when something innovative is being introduced, it doesn't matter who takes it first. What matters most is that what are the clinical reports? Have we taken this particular product through all the phases? And what is the report? What does it look like? Today, R21 vaccine has been taken through all the processes. And the report is that it is safe and it can be used. Even the paracetamol that you are using now, when you have headache, you use paracetamol. They can't just manufacture paracetamol and they will just take it to the market. It has to pass through all those phases that we are talking about: clinical trials, preclinical, clinical trials, safety measures, and some of that. So they will pass it through all these processes. And if it is fine. There are many products that are being introduced to you in your various pharmaceutical shops or whatever today that you buy. Nobody query them. But when it comes to vaccine, that's when if we are buying, they will say this paracetamol is MP, but it's not MP again, it is so. And the woman or the woman will be telling you, it does the same work with what you are used to. And you will take it with faith and you go and use it. So if they have said that this by the report, that this vaccine has passed through all the processes, and we have published data to show that it has passed through all the processes and it is safe for human consumption, I'm so sure before NAFDAC also came up to announce, they will have also weighed the options and they will have also measured and reviewed all the known data about this particular vaccine before it's being introduced. So it doesn't matter who first uses the vaccine. What matters most is that is it safe? Then what are the expected results to achieve? And with what we have said, you will see that the results, if about 75 or 80% of our children between 0 and 5% and 0 and 5 years are being protected, is it not far outweighing whatever fear that we may be nursing? In as much the reported cases about the side effect is minimal and the outcomes, or let me say the advantages outweigh the disadvantages.
All right, so the first batch to be received are 100,000 according to NAFDAC. Now, considering the prevalence of malaria and how much it has permeated the Nigerian society, for example, do you think that the quantity we're getting for a start, even if it's for a start, is commensurate with our own dire statistics in terms of malaria?
Well, as I've said earlier, you will record that yes, we have statistics, even though it's a bit complex issue about the statistics being produced in our country, but that's what we produce, and we must own it and we must claim it. That's number one. Then number two, don't forget also that NAFDAC said professional. When they give you professional approval, what it means is that it's not a generalized thing. We are still watching. That's what it means. Just like when you get admission into the university, if you come to my Osun State University now, we say we are giving you professional admission. That means your name is still written in pencil. And inside things, we can say we can withdraw it. So when something is professional means that there are some conditions that are still attached. You won't expect NAFDAC, no matter what the number looks like, or number of people that are being affected, the children that they want to protect, they can't just bring the large chunk of this into the country. Even when you look at the COVID-19 vaccine when it was brought to Nigeria, it started gradually. And you also discover that the people in government officials were the ones that they started with before it migrated to other parts, and now you can find it in all the health facilities. So you don't expect for a new product under strict compliance following the procedures that the large chunk will have been brought into the country at a go. I'm so sure gradually, once they administer it and they are monitoring the report, because even when they administer, there will still be some feedback that will be coming back. And all these things will be reviewed together, clinically, from pharmaceutical point of view, and all this will form part on the direction to go.
All right. So before we move on, I just want to ask, you made mention of, my colleague asked you the other time, how do we begin to restore public confidence? How do we begin to convince people that, look, nobody's giving you a vaccine to make you sterile, nobody's giving you a vaccine to make your head get bigger or get taller. We're just fighting a particular disease. What level of education do you think NAFDAC has to do now?
Well, it's not only NAFDAC. All the public health institutions that are involved in malaria control, not only for malaria alone, all these institutions need to go on serious public education and mobilization. Because our assumptions and fake news, they always spread easier than the truth. And the perception that people have heard over years about vaccine is very difficult. Even today, once they bring any vaccine, even if that vaccine is going to protect 1 million people immediately, people will still express that, they brought it again. And then a lot of issues will now be coming on board. What am I talking about? A lot of, not only that we do the public health education that is required. All the facilities, all the institutions, Ministry of Health, National Orientation Agency, everybody, we need to actually educate people to understand why this vaccine has to be brought into the country, being recommended partially, professionally for use, and the advantages, and that they should not entertain any fear. It took time before some of us also went for COVID-19 vaccine because of what will happen to those that have taken it. For every drug, you can't say that it don't have any slight risk. And that's why even when you buy drug, you will see a leaflet where they will tell you side effects. If you are this and this and this and this, that means that no drug, even the malaria drug that you are using, and you keep on buying it, the paracetamol that you are using, all of them will have side effects. Side effect means that you may likely, but the question you ask is that in every 100, what is the proportion? Are we together? So, in a situation where there is slight effect or side effect that is very minimal, we cannot just microphone that and put it on a megaphone and say, OTT burial. No, it's all about what of those people that have taken these particular vaccines and they are fine and they are moving on. So the orientation generally is not all about this vaccine alone. The orientation generally, once our government officials or government institutions saddled with some of these activities can come up openly and recommend some of these materials or substances for use, you should know that they have also done their due diligence and they have also screened and reviewed the safety aspect of it. And for every drug, there always be side effects. That should not be the reason why we should discourage or we should tell people not to take it. Orientation, and I'm glad you are doing this. People are watching us at home. They can listen to us. Every vaccine that has passed through clinical stages and came out clean and safe for use is good to use. And for the government officials or government agencies to announce that you can use it, we should not entertain fear. Let us take them. It's for our own benefit. So everybody must be involved, including yourself, myself, and everyone.
Well, for the COVID-19 vaccine, we heard that it was not going to stop, contracting, the virus or something. But then, with the malaria vaccine, is it going to stop, the contraction of malaria, or it's just going to boost the immunity of those children that when they do, they could easily bounce back?
Well, you need to understand the meaning of vaccine. Vaccine is a biological substance that is taken to provide what we call acquired immunity against particular infection in a person. So what it means is that it's going to protect you, but it has its own lifespan. Are we together? So based on that, not that you won't contract it again for life, but during the stage through which you may be at serious risk, you'll be protected. For example, we have mentioned that this R21 vaccine will protect the children for about 2 years. So and they said that's for 3 doses. If the 4th one is taken, it can also extend the protection for another 2 years. There is a threshold we have mentioned now. We said between 0 and 5, they are more at risk. If you have not taken something that will protect you to be out of that danger zone, then that means that you can battle the rest. That means that the adults are not dying of malaria. Are we together? The figures that we are having, not that adults are not dying of malaria, but we are talking about those people that their immune systems have already been compromised. Most importantly, the children, they'll be protected. You'll be worried. One of my students, my postgraduate student, work on what we call placenta malaria. Placenta malaria means that you will see newborn baby. Within 1 or 2 days, they will say that this particular baby has malaria. You will say that they gave birth to this baby yesterday. How come the issue of malaria? That fellow has already, the newborn baby got the malaria from the mother because the connection, the placenta that connects, if the mother is infected with malaria, the blood transmission between the mother and the fetus, the baby will surely have some of these cases. And we have seen the cases. What we are not saying is that this particular child, for any offense that he or she has not committed, may just have a short while to live. Because we have seen malaria also responsible in few cases for abortion, in some cases for stillbirth. And what we say is that, somebody that fought our mother yesterday and said that I'm going to show you. So the outcome is what we have seen. It's not the outcome. It's as a result of the fact that the baby, before you give birth to this particular baby, that baby has already had malaria. So if you are not saying that between 5 and let me say 36 months, 5 months and 36 months you'll be protected, and you can take this vaccine, you'll be protected. If you take another dose, it will protect you for another 2 years. The red or danger zone, you will have crossed it easily. Just like we are talking about the issue of polio. being given to the children, what we mean is that this particular infection is age associated. That if you cross certain level of age, you have already built up the immunity that will enable you to be able to resist or to deal with this particular infection. It's the same process that we are talking about.
All right.
Okay, so now let's look at other issues. In the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, Nigeria has had an outbreak of one disease or the other, meningitis at some point, cholera, and Lassa fever is a running battle. Diphtheria recently in northern Nigeria and some part of southwestern Nigeria.
Because our laboratory at Osun State University is the laboratory approved for diphtheria analysis in southwestern Nigeria.
So in some states, like Osun had a case, one registered case. Now, what are we not getting right in the public health fight? Why do we still have, for instance, Lassa fever? It's been on for a long time. It was run. Most persons didn't pay attention to Lassa fever during the COVID era, but it was killing people just alongside COVID, even up till January this year. What are we not getting right?
Well, as I've said earlier at the beginning of this interview, issue about public health, one infection and the other in Africa, precisely in Nigeria, is a multifactorial issues. Our environment predisposes us to some of these infections. Our environment, and then to our lifestyle, way of life also predisposes us. How many times do you need any government to come and arrest you before you know that when it rains, you don't need to carry all the debris inside your house and take it to the drainage in front of your house and go and pour it there with assumption that the water will wash it away. Sometimes the rain may stop and you will see that some of these debris will just block the water. Once there is any small blockage, it's a very good breeding site for mosquitoes. They will go there and go and construct duplex. And then they continue to live their life quietly without any trouble. How do you want to take public health officers, or you want to take minister or commissioner for this? It's our way of life attitude. They've given you insecticide bed net, sleep on it. You take the same bed net to go and be using it to fence your farm or to protest. A lot of abuse. Today, we know that Lassa fever, even though it runs throughout the year, but it's more prevalent during the dry season. Why? Because most of these jungles that the rodents that transmit the Lassa fever, the virus, normally stay, they will have been burnt, and they will want to encroach a safer place. The safer place is to move to the nearest houses. And they live very close to areas that are dirty or filthy areas. Keep your house clean. Even if there is any approach for any of them to come around, if your environment is clean, they won't safe. They won't feel safe and they won't stay there. You won't see any rats coming in the open and come and stay inside your sitting room and sit down. They will go hide in those filthy areas within the rooms. If you have kept your rooms clean, safe, some of these animals won't come in, and if they do, they run back because they know that they are not safe. They will be exposed. So the issue about it, and the issue about it is human, environmental, and our health system. Honestly, our health system needs to be strengthened, but the government is doing the best that they can do, but it requires everyone to come on board to also see that we own the system, and we must also play our role to support the system. If not, we'll be battling these issues. As we are moving from one, we move to another one. We deal with another one. Some of these issues can, at best, be treated at the preventive level, and that's the best. Sleep under the bed net, mosquito won't bite you. If you have heeded to that instruction, at least you are protected midnight from malaria transmitting mosquitoes. But what do we see? Some people will say, that net, it's too stuffy, it's too this, it's too that. They collect it and they abandon it somewhere. They won't use it, only to be parading it. I have 5 in my house. Come and look at it, it's still new. Is that the purpose? Oh, used WindowNet. We have done some study that show that if you use WindowNet very well correctly, mosquitoes won't be able to come in. But what do we see? You will see some of the WindowNet already mutilated. Any slight difference in the mesh size of the net, mosquitoes can still come in. The fellow will be parading himself that I have WindowNet on my window, but mosquito can still find their way. Keep your environment clean, not only for mosquitoes, for rodents and all other things. How many of us are doing that? Don't pour anything inside the gutter. People will still go and pour. Take malaria drug, use it for 3 days. They will use it for 1 day. By second day, they will say nothing. My body, I'm feeling good now. They will abandon it.
What danger does that portend? This particular issue now of abandoning dosage of
it's very serious as the infection that is dealing with you. Because what it means is that you are giving that particular parasite, not, we call it subdoses. What it means is that it's not up to the optima. If they say use a particular dose for 3 or 4 days at different interval, that is the optima to clear up. But if you use it for 1 day and you stop, some of the parasite inside some of them have already been exposed to some leather doses, but they are not in full complement. What it means is that it's just like a normal process. It's just like a normal process. When we are young, or let me say for one of my children, my son, when he was young, when you say, Lagwaja, don't do that, Ojuju is coming, he will run away. Then it got to a stage that you say, Ojuju is coming, you will be the one to first say, meaning that you know that no Ojuju is coming from anywhere. You are the Ojuju that you are talking about. What you are saying is that by the time you expose the parasite to a lower doses of any particular substance, you give them opportunity to develop resistance. And by the time they develop resistance, because their body is just like, you want to catch me, I want to escape. Are we together? And then you try to close the door, but you now leave a small space for me. I can continue to squeeze myself until when I make it. In their body, there are some, we call them binding surfaces. Most of these drugs that you are talking about, they have these surfaces where they bind on the parasite to be able to deal with them. Are we together? By the time you expose them to lower doses, you are giving them opportunity also to readjust themselves. Are we together? And perhaps secrete some materials that will also enable them. They also have enzymes that will also enable them to be able to become resistant to whatever. By the time you are bringing the higher doses, they've already developed the system, let me put it that way, that will be able to detoxify whatever you are bringing in. Are we together? And by the time you bring it in, it won't work. Let me give you an instance. In mosquito, when we are young, carry something, immediately you blow it inside your room, you will see the mosquitoes on the floor. They are all dead. But as time goes on, when you carry your raid, 3 minutes after, you will still see them coming back. What does that mean? That means that particular insecticide only knock them, but after a while, they get back their strength and they come back because they'll be able to detoxify. It's just that you give somebody sedative drug. That's what you have done to them. The same thing we are talking about when you are not completing. Sedative. It will sleep for a while. Then after that, it will wake up. By the time it wakes up, he has already identified you that you are the one. Okay. Once you see any man with this also color and color, it's a very dangerous one. Then escape through this route. It's the same process in the mosquito or any other infection. When you expose them continuously to the same drug, well, when you go to hospital, they first ask you, have you used any drug? If you say I've used that drug, they say, can you see the leaflet or whatever? They want to see the drug you have used before so that they will know what to recommend. Because giving you the same set of drugs continuously, you are making what we call drug pressure, and you are giving that parasite the opportunity to detoxify and become resistant to that particular either antibiotics or anti-malaria or mosquito. Presently, I'm sorry to say this, in our university at Osun State University, I've been the principal investigator leading some mosquito works on whether our mosquitoes that we have in southwestern Nigeria, they are resistant to known insecticides. And the studies we have seen over the years is very alarming. You just discover that a lot of abuses are going on in terms of insecticides. They say, pafu, you say, oh, they said it works. And you bring it in. You expose some of these insects into this substandard, because nobody measures some of them, substandard drugs, but it contains some element of active ingredient. So they become resistant easily. And once a generation of mosquito has become resistant to an insecticide, all the generation that will be coming from that mosquito will be resistant to that particular insecticide.
Mm. So we have bandit mosquitoes or terrorist mosquitoes?
No. Yes, but they are still susceptible to some insecticide. But what we are saying is that the study we are leading at Osun State University is to determine what type of insecticides are these mosquitoes in our localities resistant to, or they are susceptible to, so that it will also help the policymakers to be able to determine what kills some of these mosquitoes. And the work is being funded by Global Fund and USAID. And for the past 4 years we have been running, and we are getting some interesting results. And you discover that about 2 or 3 years, some set of new nets were distributed in Osun State. This set of new nets have some element of chemicals that are in addition to what they used to use to impregnate insecticide dependent that we had before. It was as a result of our study. It was our study that brought it out, and we recommended accordingly. And Osun was one of the states. Osun, I think, Kwara. They are the 2 states where they piloted this particular new insecticide dependent, and we got a very interesting result.
Mm. All right, just before we let you go, I'd like to know what your comments are on this, the United Nations WHO intentions to end malaria by setting a year. Do you think that goal can be met?
Yes, it is normal for UN, WHO, and other agencies, most importantly WHO, to set action plans. We call them action plans, and they give goals to be able to achieve that. It's just like when you are making your own strategic plan, that okay, by year 2030 we want to eliminate malaria. Some countries have already eliminated malaria. So meaning that it's not something that is so powerful than the human. Are we together? But a lot of things have to go have to be prepared to go into it. It's not something that we just say by paper or by mouth. We must all work. It is a good process because you'll be able to measure whether those strategies that you are deploying, they are working and you are getting closer. Given a kind of action plans and the set goals for the years to end particular disease does not mean that everybody globally or all the countries globally will end that particular infection. But they will also come when you see WHO given a kind of framework that by so year we want to end this. They will also give you strategies towards ending that particular infection. The question will now be that how have we gone on the table in implementing these strategies towards eliminating or ending this particular disease? These are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves and to be measuring as a country. Those strategies that WHO have listed, are we moving close? WHO listed those strategies. Are we moving close? How far have we gone? Have we done this? Have we done this? What are the results? That will give us opportunity to also accelerate our journey towards meeting these set goals. But for UN to have set any goal or any time is what is normal and it is best practice. What matters most is that for each country to measure how far have we gone with all these strategies towards meeting the deadline.
All right, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the show. Professor Mansour Adeleke is a professor of public health, entomology and parasitology at the university, at the Osun State University, Osogbo. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for having me.
All right, some interesting conversation there, but also very scary, because now we know that some mosquitoes are finding their way to be immune, as it were, to some measures to combat them. That's why you should not self-medicate, and that's why you should also finish your doses whenever you're given by medical practitioners. Well, that's where we'll end the interview segment. I'll be back to tell you what's trending in Benue State. Samuel Otom is in the news, Smart Adeyemi is in the news, and of course the aviation workers are in the news. See you after this break.
Thanks for staying with us during the newspaper review and the interview session. I am Temitope Ajijola Oluwola. Thanks for watching.